Welcome to today's event, remembering the innocent victims of the Connecticut Witch Trials. The Connecticut Witch Trial Exoneration Project is a collaboration of all the people that you're seeing today, plus many, many more. And all of us welcome you. And thank you for, this is a very, very special occasion. This is our first remembrance ceremony, expert panel, and we have some very important voices for you to hear today.
All right, my name is Josh Hutchinson.
I'm Sarah Jack.
You may know us from the podcast Witch Hunt about the witch trials.
And the Exoneration Project that I just spoke of.
We just want to tell you about today's program briefly and then get right into the wonderful reading we're going to hear and a few remarks. So we will have remarks by Representative Jane Garibay, and then the talented Deborah J. Walsh and Ginny Wolf will treat us to a reading of the last night.
And then we have remarks from Dr. Catherine Hermes about colonial law and the exoneration legislation. That's going to be by video today. And we will finish the indoor portion with, oh, it scrolled down. Hold on. Yeah. Where'd it go? Okay, then we have the all-star panel, and they will discuss the history of the witch trials, what lessons we can draw from them. I'm sure many of you know what those are, but we like to talk about it a lot. And the significance of the exoneration. Then we will finish with a remembrance ceremony. And after that, you're invited to do a quiet walk with us over to the ancient burying ground, where we will have another small moment of remembrance. And then their executive director, Christine Jewell, and Dr. Ross will be there to give historical information and tours. During the, is this where we want?
Yeah.
Okay.
While we're at the ancient burying ground, we will lay flowers on memorial bricks that have been placed there for some of the victims.
And here to do a proper welcome is Representative Jane Garibay.
So it was an honor to work with this incredible group of people, and it is a testament to what we can do when we work together. There were no egos. We were a team, always. This resolution complemented our work in the General Assembly by taking another step towards the justice the state of Connecticut is constantly working towards. Far from frivolous, this resolution was part and parcel of realizing equality and fairness that we work to achieve each and every day. Symbolic gestures do have real impact. This was a simple and compassionate way of expressing the state's remorse and all of our personal remorse for this dark period in our history. People asked, why address this now? We would ask, and they would say, it happened a long time ago. And we said, why not now? We have to fight against the misogyny that was at the core of these murders, and it's far from over. What happened to those 9 women and 2 men could happen again today. In a world in which injustice and terror takes so many forms. We must learn from our history. We have to look at history and the facts and learn from it, and try not to make those same mistakes. Let us recognize this injustice in our past so that we might strive towards justice in our future and become better people. I was so honored, as I said before. It took so many people. It took a team, and it was like we were a puzzle. If we were missing one piece of that puzzle, we would have lost the bill. Luckily, Senator Amar and I, we work really well together because it can pass in the House and then die in the Senate, right? And then it could be that the governor doesn't sign it or our leadership doesn't even call the bill. So it took that working together and all the work that you, Beth, Sarah, Josh, Tony, everybody did. And I am just so honored that I was the one that was able, along with Senator Omar, to help you at the state capitol. Thank you.
And now we have a dramatic reading. Deborah, do you just want to start?
No, we're ready to go.
Ready to go. Okay, The Last Night is an original play by Deborah J. Walsh and Ginny Wolfe, and it is wonderful. And take it away.
That's not gonna happen again.
My love.
Now deserves to die.
Now deserves to die. Figures, demons have left your body, and they're waiting to follow among us. Black figures. Oh, here falls me, and what is in my heart? Thou deservest to die.
Thou deserves to die.
Help me. Help me.
Rebecca? Mary Barnes. No! Rebecca, what have you done? I've done nothing. Why are you here? Come to pray for me?
Pray for you. I'm to hang because of you. They think I am a witch. You are the witch, Rebecca. If you were not to hang as well, I would kill you myself. My children! I want to see my children! Oh, no, not like this. Not in prison. I shift. Dark and cold.
Oh, shush. You cackle more than my hens. I've spent more time here than you. My teeth are loose, my eyes accustomed to the dark, my body to the cold. But you, Mary Barnes, wife of the goodman Thomas Barnes, ousted from your comfortable home to be hanged.
Just hush. Just leave me be. You've caused enough trouble. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. Forgive our trespass against us and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us
The
from evil.
Lord will deliver you. I think not. The Lord hath forsaken us, given us up to Satan.
No, Rebecca, he has not abandoned me. I am not an accomplice of the devil, whatever you may say.
Who believed you?
Who believes me? God, my God believes me.
Does your husband believe you?
Oh, of course, Thomas believes me. My husband must believe me.
Yet, where was he at your trial? He did not speak up for you. He stayed away, nowhere to be seen.
We agreed upon that. Had he defended me, he might come under suspicion himself, and we have 4 children to care for. It is what we agreed upon. It was for the best.
Best for who? Not for you. Did he even pray for you? You know his eyes strayed. How convenient to allow you to be hanged.
How dare you? Wait. How is it you know it was not my trial? You have been jailed here for days.
No one gossips with me. They hate me. But my husband, Nathaniel, he receives visitors. He's in there. Are you asleep, my good man?
Who visits him? What do they say? Do they speak of me? Talk to me, Rebecca. I know we dislike each other, but...
Like you flatter yourself. I feel nothing for you. No like, no dislike, nothing. No, shush. I want to sleep.
I'll be having no sleep on this our last night. I refuse to sit in despair. Surely God will deliver me. And yet, my head aches and my heart pounds so it will fly out of my chest. I am
Afraid, Mary?
Yes. Are you not afraid? Please, Rebecca, I just need a few words to stop my heart from pounding.
Oh, it will be stopped.
They are all right. You are a lewd and ignorant woman. Why have you wronged me, Rebecca?
Why were you accused? What have you done, pious Mary? What are you hiding?
Nothing. I hide nothing. I know not why they came for me. I can only think it is my association with you. Yes, you. You could never keep your tongue. And now all who have danced with you at the merry meetings have been accused. Mary Sanford, James Wakely, Judith Varlett, Judith Ayres.
Stop talking. I have enough struggle in my mind tonight. I don't need your pain as well. You came to my merry meetings of your own accord. I didn't force you. I didn't drag you there against your will.
'Tis true. How often I thought to join you in the woods. How I knew Thomas would be angry. But oh, I was so curious. And then one time I relent. Had I only known. And yet it was such a relief to be away from the housework. Cold eyes, disapproval, men. To dance, to sing, to sip a bit of stout, to tell a story. I feel I had a bit of power. I know it was sinful, but it made me happier than I had been in a long time. Yet, Rebecca, you know, I was only there once. I did not dance with the devil. Unless the pleasure I felt was the devil at work.
Or the stout.
The stout, it was good. But it was not worth this. What have I done? I deceived Thomas. I abandoned my children. I left them for a bit of distraction. Oh, Thomas, oh, children.
Oh, you're a sniveling coward. Oh, my Thomas. Oh, my children.
Heavenly Father, we come before thee with humble hearts to seek your
Oh, my
revival.
humble heart. I despise your pathetic prayers.
Do not be vile with me. I am a pious woman. I am an innocent woman. How can I save myself?
You can't.
I cannot bear this. I do not have the strength to face them.
I refuse to let them see me spineless. They are all against us and want us dead. They will laugh at us and scorn us tomorrow as we are led to the gallows, but we will not give them the pleasure of seeing our fear. No, we must hold our heads up. Now, that's funny, Mary. Surely you can smile at that.
Heads up.
6 shillings for this wicked slop. This is poison. I wish it was poison. I could die now. But it wasn't the poison that killed her. It was that child, Elizabeth Kelly.
Why do you speak of Elizabeth Kelly?
I was there.
Yes, I hear the good wife Ayres. She poisoned that child. She bewitched that child.
Judith was my friend. She did nothing to the child. She saw the girl walking home alone from worship and fed her some broth.
No, alone. No. I heard that she was with her grandmother.
Her grandmother, her family, what does it matter?
It does have matter. The truth matters. They say she was poisoned, but by whom? It has to be Judith.
Judith showed only kindness to the child and took pity knowing the family didn't have much. wasn't until the second night after they drank the broth when Elizabeth fell ill. And then, from a sound sleep in the middle of the night, the child bolted up, arms in the air.
Father, Mother, help me, help me. Good airs upon me. She chokes me. She kneels on my belly. She will break my bow. She pinches me. She will make me black and blue. Oh, Father, help me.
And she kept on. I still hear her in my dreams. A sick, feverish young girl gibbering away about a woman who was kind to her.
Good airs torments me. She pricks me with pins. She will kill me.
And then, 3 days after her suffering had started, Elizabeth was quiet until midnight.
Father, she chokes me.
And then, she lay dead.
Oh my God, poor child.
I swear to you, it was the nightmares caused by fever, those ragings. Judas Ayres is not a witch. Judith was a constant at the deathbed. She wished her no harm.
But the doctor who examined her body said there was no natural cause for her death.
That man? I doubt he could recognize a dead chicken.
But where is Judith now? Who's that?
It doesn't sound like the jailer.
Can you hear anything? Is it Thomas?
Oh, shush!
What are they saying? What did they say?
They speak of Anne Cole, about how she was right.
Anne Cole.
Yes, that one wanted to stir up trouble. Right after the death of Elizabeth Kelly, speaking in tongues, speaking in Dutch, naming us all. A frustrated young girl, desperate for a husband, desperate for attention. Mind you, those fits will stop the moment we're hanged. She's a smart one, that witch.
Well, call her a witch, but she was the one possessed. Oh, my head spins. This is madness.
Not madness, hysteria. That's the true poison. And Cole and the other girls falling to the floor in hysterics, screaming.
The tickets left the body of poor Elizabeth, and now they taunt me. They laugh at me. They have bewitched me.
Anne Cole having those fits, and then in church speaking Dutch. Why, I heard some good wives fainted at the sight. Surely the devil was at work in her body.
So gullible. The devil in her body. She wanted attention. She envied us that we were married.
No, she was possessed. She cried it out.
These women have beset me with demons.
She called of demons and of the devil, and, oh dear Lord, what chance do we have with the
There
devil
are
so
no
near?
demons. Mary, there is no devil, there's no witches. And Cole was not possessed.
No. She was examined by 4 ministers, and they did not find her fits to be false. And how could she speak in tongues, in Dutch, if she were not possessed by the devil?
Oh, think on it, Mary. We are surrounded by the Dutch.
The 4 ministers? Did they examine her all at once? Perhaps they frightened her.
No one knows. But she knows. But she won't say. She claims she cannot remember. The ministers wrote down the words she was shrieking while possessed, including names.
Did she spy on us? Did she see me in the fire?
Mary, Anne Cole was not the only one cunning enough to be a spy. Yeah, we were seen.
We were seen, you mean me?
No, by Goodman Robert Stearns.
Please, Rebecca. He could not have recognized us.
Claimed he saw us in the woods dancing with a kettle over a fire. He said he knew us by our clothing and that there were 2 black creatures with us.
Black creatures? The Indians? Oh, Rebecca, you are foolish enough to engage with them.
I am not foolish. How do you think I learned of the plants to make my stout?
Well, but might they have been there? They may have been what Robert Stern saw, or their spirits. Or perhaps it was merely the shadows from the fire, or simply our shawls in the breeze.
It matters not. He believes me to be in league with the devil. They all want to believe that.
How could Robert Stearns have truly seen anything? We all know of his poor eyesight. And why did Anne Cole say your name? Oh, there are just too many questions. So, Elizabeth Kelly, she named Judith Ayres. Judith Ayres named you. Your husband called it slander, but I think not. Wronged and betrayed by your friend, that's what you really deserve.
You know nothing. And it's not for you to have an opinion about.
But why would Judith name you?
She and her husband were both put to the water test. Hands and feet bound, thrown in water so cold they were sure to turn blue. And I watched her head being slammed in and out of the surface of the water. The neighbors hated her so much they kept plunging her into the water. And yet she bobbed like a cork. She floated. So they said, she's a witch. And still, they did not take her out of the water. They tortured her until she named others, until she said, Rebecca Greensmith conspired with the devil to kill Elizabeth Kelly. She's that witch. And now she's gone. No apologies, just gone.
She is gone. Escaped with her husband. It was the devil that set them free.
Oh, such dog drivel. Friends arranged for their escape.
No, I do not believe that. They left their sons behind, and that is unnatural.
If I knew what she did, I would flee too. Take my daughters and leave Nathaniel.
Oh, I could never do that. Take my children from their father? But of course I was forced to leave them. They took me away in front of my children.
My daughters saw nothing. They were busy on the outskirts of the farm.
It's January 6th. Early morning, and we had barely broken our fast. Fire in the hearth. Took some coaxing. The winds had blown it out. It was cold. Dark.
I'd staggered down to the hogs for their feeding. I'd had too much stout the night before, and I'd forgotten my shawl.
Thomas was quiet. Unusual for him, and now I think he must have known what was to happen. I heard sounds outside, a pounding at the door that Thomas was suddenly reluctant to answer.
Nathaniel was nowhere to be seen. I looked up, and they were there. I met them with laughter. Oh, so you finally got around to it. Just let me go get my shawl. They wouldn't allow that, and said I'd be bringing more of the devil with me. They were that determined to purge this colony of witches.
There stood 3 of them, declaring I was to be taken to trial for being a witch. My poor children watching as their mother was led away, asking questions, little Hannah crying. It's their last memory of me, unless they come to hear me hanged, see me hanged.
Tied to the ox cart, I came here. I waited. I slept. Did you not know you were doomed when they came to your home?
I could not think, but for my tears, taken away with my children watching. But I had to believe that God would protect me.
I wasn't afraid at first, but I knew how those suspected were interrogated in England. They examined, they questioned, they read to me.
At my trial, I was too afraid to speak. Those men, so stern, so hateful. Since we came to Farmington, they have looked right through me, but there, they seem not to take their eyes off of me.
When I was taken to trial, I kept my eyes steady on Magistrate Matthew Allen. Are you suing me today, I asked, or trying again to sue your brother Thomas?
Why, taunt? Why did you not remain
I
silent?
could not silence my tongue. When have I ever been silent? I should have been a man. But there was no defense for me. I knew I was to be hanged.
You knew. So you told them you were familiar with the devil. Why did you not pray?
Pray, Mary, to your God.
No, he is our God.
Praise God! Praise God! Praise God! I am to die with the saints!
How did you know?
I make stout, Mary. I drink and dance in public. I did not keep the Sabbath day holy. Robert Stern said, there are witches among us, and all eyes were on me. They had already condemned me.
I wish I had found the courage to speak, to tell them exactly what I thought. They may overlook me, but I have eyes, and I have ears. I listen to Thomas as he goes on and on about his conversations. He thinks I do not have the brains to understand or to remember, that my impressions don't matter.
We don't matter.
All those men judging me as if they were God. Well, only God may judge me. I tell you, Rebecca, the more I think on it, the more I burn. As if they are perfect. I have always held my tongue, but now I have nothing to lose. What are they going to do, kill me? I could not comprehend all they said at my trial. All I truly heard them say was,
Thou deservest to die.
But you were anything but silent. Do you know what you have done? Beyond the dancing, beyond the fire, beyond the stout, how could you say such things? How could you confess to such things? Thomas told me that you can claim to meet with the devil in the shape of a fawn and had carnal knowledge of him, and you were going to sign a contract at Christmas time. Surely you knew these stories would make trouble for us all.
Have you ever been pushed, Mary? Pushed to where you no longer care what happens? When the reverends were reading to me, my flesh felt as though it were being pulled from my bones, and they kept at me, and I was so cold and so tired, and after a while, nothing mattered.
Nothing mattered. The gallows. We were to hang in the morning. It mattered. We matter. This is on you. You have done this. Why?
Damn you, Mary Barnes!
No, damn you, Rebecca Greensmith. You swagger about drinking your stout, laughing at others, caring not who you may hurt with your actions. You make up stories, revel in destroying reputations, dance with the devil. You send a mother of four to her death. What do you have against me? What have I ever done to you?
What have you done? You think you're better than the rest of us. Married to the brave Thomas Barnes, who helped murder a village of Indians.
Okay, you just leave him out of
Oh,
this.
you pray, and you claim piety, but I see what you really are. You're selfish, you're immense, a pitiful goody hiding behind her husband, a husband who should have protected you, pushed around by the church, pushed around by her neighbors, but always watching and judging others, judging me. All of you judging me.
No, you are the one who judges. You are a proven liar. You are a troublemaker, a shrew.
You know nothing of me.
And you know nothing of me. You have no idea how I struggle, how I try to live a godly life. I do not claim piousness. I strive for it. But now, if I am to be hanged as a witch, will God accept me into heaven? You have condemned me to hell. And you have stolen me from my children. My children are everything to me, and I am abandoning them. They are so young, Hannah will not even remember me. I cannot bear it.
You think that I am not broken at the thought of leaving my own two girls? I have sacrificed so much to raise them, and now I'll be gone before I even get to see them grown.
Raise them. How? By drinking and dancing and lying.
How dare you even speak of them? They are the best of me. They are all that is good in my life. I have taught them to be independent, to think for themselves, not to be led around like blind sheep. Mary, I have no desire to take children from their mother. I have a mother's heart. I did not accuse you. Yes, I named names. I told many lies, but I did not accuse you. I didn't even think of you.
Do you swear to God?
Oh, again with your God.
Well, then swear on the life of your daughters.
I will not.
Why? If you did not accuse me, what do you have to fear?
I fear nothing. Nothing. I live to protect my daughters.
Oh, protect them. You accused your husband. You make them orphans.
I could not leave them to his mercy. His first visit here to me, he said, "Now that you've confessed against yourself, leave me alone and say nothing of me, and I will be good unto thy daughters."
That sounds comforting.
It wasn't comforting. It was a threat. He threatened my daughters. So of course I named him. I told the magistrates it was my love for his soul.
Love. His soul. You are soulless, Rebecca. We all know there is no love.
I love my daughters. After their father died, I did what was necessary. I was fearful to marry Nathaniel. I'd heard of his violent nature, yet he could provide for us. And I had no choice. There was no one else wanting me.
You know he is innocent, yet you let him hang.
Innocent. We are all innocent, but he is cruel. He's a thief.
Thomas did say he was a thief.
He is cunning and cruel and mean, and I cannot leave my children with him.
I did not know. Thomas is cold, but I do not fear him like that. We both live for our children. We're both leaving our children and can no longer protect them.
I do swear on the lives of my daughters that I did not name you. When I was naming names, I didn't think of you. I knew there was gossiping about me, but not from you. You don't speak idly of people.
I tried to be a good person, not to be drawn into the business of others. But I don't have your backbone. I admire the way you handle yourself, your ferocity.
Ferocity. That's a lovely word, a perfect word for how I see this world.
Well, if it wasn't you, then who was who sent me to my death? If it was not you, I must think that it was Anne Cole, for it was after her possession that they came for me.
Have you thought it might be your Thomas? How soon before he weds Mary Andrews? She's had her eyes on him. What if he has chosen this way to get rid of you? You said he's cold.
No. No, I cannot believe that.
Believe it, Mary. He did not protect you, nor did your God.
have this. You have suffered long enough in this place.
Thank you. I have suffered. Do you hear me, Nathaniel? I have suffered. Okay, don't talk. Spend your last hours alone and angry. He won't speak to me since I accused him. I am not sad to see him end. The world will be a better place without him in it. I mean, think on it, Mary. Your life with Thomas. Are you sad to see it end?
Oh, Rebecca, such a question. Yeah. Maybe a relief. I am so tired, so weary since Hannah's birth. Caring for 4 children and a husband and a household has just been so... I know it is my duty. There are times I just want to sink to the ground and never move again. I'm weak. I'm so weak. Thomas tells me so every day. And yet I have borne him 4 children. A weak woman could not survive that. And I know he expects more. Indeed, I may be with child as we speak. Of course, it will never breathe outside the womb. It will be silenced at the gallows, just like its mother. Rebecca, if I am with child, it will be their sin when it dies. And our other children, what will become of them?
Surely our children will miss us for a time. But we will be quickly forgotten, Mary, just as we have forgotten those who died before us. But what they did to us is more the devil's work than anything they accuse us of. It grows closer to dawn.
Oh, dear God. How can the end be so near? It seems only yesterday I came here, an innocent girl, no devil in my heart. And yet we have done nothing. Why should we hang? I say I am weary of this world, but I'm not ready to leave it. Oh, Rebecca, imagine if we had been pardoned.
I could be with my daughters. I could keep them safe. We could run away, go somewhere else, find Judith Ayres and start again.
And I could watch my children grow, see them married and perhaps have children of their own, and better my life with Thomas.
We could help each other instead of accusing each other.
I could learn from you how to raise strong girls.
And I could learn from you how to keep my tongue and find grace in my life.
We might be companions, allies.
They would never allow it. They'd never leave us alone.
They would suspect us to the end of our lives. Their fingers would be pointed at us.
We'd be in and out of jail, in and out of the court, always defending ourselves, our children.
Forever marked as the spawn of a witch, perhaps suspect as well.
With us gone, this will pass. We will be forgotten. May they continue to live a good life. No, it's better to end this now.
The world has become a place of madness. Everyone driven by fear. Oh, Rebecca, do you remember? We were there when Mary Sanford was hanged. We followed the cart out to the gallows. We pointed fingers. We cried witch. We watched her kick and claw and then go still. At the time it was sport, and it seemed right to rid the world of the devil's consort.
The kicking and the clawing was too long for me. I fear that, Mary. We are here waiting for that. They will hang us so high so everyone can see from a distance we have no escape. Your God will not intervene, and I'm afraid to die.
I am as well. Yet God will protect us. He will have a place for us in heaven.
In heaven. I know that I will not go to your heaven. You said that I am soulless.
No.
But I have a soul, and I have a heart, and they're broken, and I'm alone.
No, Rebecca. My God will care for you. He knows the truth. No matter which of us is hanged first, we will not be alone. He will be with us, and if I go first, I will be with you in your heart.
And I will be with you. But if there is a God, why does he allow this to happen?
It may be that God is angry, and he has allowed the devil to have his way with us until they stand against him. Rebecca, if you will not pray with me, will you sing with me? Let God hear us from this place. Let him know that we are with him and that we wish for him to be with us.
I don't think it will make a difference, Mary. But yes, I will. I will sing with you. I will pour out my heart as I used to pour out my stout. But it's you that I cling to, Mary, not your God. It's you that I cling to.
Thou faithful servant
Of the Lord,
sing out his praise
with one accord,
while serving him
with all your might, and keeping vigil through the night.
For this drama, and they have played this drama throughout your community. They are advocates through their drama for these voices, and we thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. They're honored.
The arts are very important in telling history, so we're just so thankful that you could imagine and bring the humanity to us. We felt that. And well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you could be back in your seats at 2 p.m., we will start our educational piece with our expert panel, and you don't want to miss it. You'll have less questions and more questions about witch trials. Thank you for taking your seats. We're going to get started again. If Representative Garibay, Senator Anwar could come up here for a moment. And I want to make sure everybody knows what they're doing for you guys, where they're working. So Representative Garibay is the Windsor and Windsor blocks. And Senator Anwar is East Hartford, Ellington, East Windsor, and South Windsor. During our panel, you're going to hear from them directly, but we want to take this moment to recognize the history they made Their leadership made this happen. We're extremely grateful. Descendants are grateful. The community is grateful. Thank you for your work. And we just have this, an appreciation. HJ34 is the bill number. Their voices, 1647, were heard in 2023. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Then we have two very important advocates who would like to come forward, Beth Crusoe and Tony Frigo. I'm a descendant of Winifred Benham, who was the last woman with her daughter tried at the Hartford court for witchcraft. She was acquitted. When I found her in my genealogy about 4 or 5 years ago, I went looking for information. And these are the guys that I found. In Colorado, I found them here in Connecticut. Because they were talking about this every day, almost every day, but on social media, if you wanted to find out, what is the deal with these witch trials? They were in Connecticut. This was a really good way to find a place to start. Tony started this in 2005. He's had lots of colleagues over the years working with him, but this man got us here today by working with This says the bill's number and 1647 to 2023 because that's when the resolution finally passed. Yes.
And Beth Caruso, for many years, has been a voice for the voiceless victims of the Connecticut Witch Trials. Through her writing, we've been able to imagine what the life and trial was like for Alice Young, the very first victim of the witch trials in 1647. And Beth's been a tireless advocate. She's been promoting the exoneration and memorialization for years and years. And thank you for your hard work and dedication and being a voice for the victims.
Do we mention someone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Our friend Kathy Spada-Basto, she worked on these efforts with us for many, many years. She passed away in the fall. She's written books as well. She wrote a recent one about Catherine Harris. She wrote another one about the Hartford witch panic. Again, her name is Catherine Spada-Basto. So I believe her books are still available on Amazon. So I wanted to recognize her as well because for a period of time, you know, she was involved as well. And some about the really early people who were involved in this.
Yeah, well, I was going to do that as part of the presentation, but I need to give you a timeline. Back in 2005, October 17th, Walter Woodward, who was our state historian at the time, was giving a lecture in Torrington, Connecticut on the witch trial. And myself and numerous people went to the event. And it was a great presentation, and afterwards there was about 4 or 5 people that went up to Walter Woodward and said, you know, there's so many people here in Connecticut who have never ever heard of witch trials in our state. Massachusetts has gotten all that attention over the years. So we decided, we asked Woodward, has the state ever done anything to rectify this? And he says, well, no, he says, but that sounds like a good idea. So about 4 or 5 of us, we decided, we formed an ad hoc committee at the time. There was myself, there was Kathy, her husband, a friend of mine who worked on the police department with me, and a few other people. And from that point on, we started. And the 2 lead people were Deborah Avery and her daughter, who were descendants. And they took the lead for 2 years. They got a lot of press. In 2008, they presented before the General Assembly right here in Hartford on the witch trials, and another proclamation. It didn't pass. The following year, 2009, they tried again, and it didn't pass again. And they became disenchanted and sort of dropped out. And it's unfortunate, but all these people that came together from different walks of life and religions and what have you, realized that the state of Connecticut for so many years hadn't paid attention to what took place here in the 1600s. And it was a real tragedy. Thank you.
We have a little friend who's a big friend now, William Schlote, who gave testimony in person before the Joint Committee when they were voting on HJ 34, and he has made this beautiful presentation for us, and I'm going to invite him up. Come on up, William, so you guys can really see the extent of the accusations that occurred here.
Hello, I'm William Schlote. And me and my mom helped create this, we worked together to create this poster. And over here it's kind of saying who was executed. There were 11 people executed, 2 men and 9 women. And over here it shows who was indicted, kind of like more like formally accused. There were 7 men and 14 women. And then there was one person who was just convicted, but then John Winthrop Jr. kind of like got her out of being indicted. And then these over there, we have people who were like either accused informally or just slandered. And we have 3 men, we have 2 unknown, and we have 13 women. And I have a quote from me that I said in my testimony, which says, if I had a time machine, I would travel back to Hartford in the 1600s to help the people who are being accused of witchcraft. I would especially try to rescue these young children whose mothers were being called witches. And I did this just to show how there were people who were executed, but also just people who were accused or people thought who were witches, and how unjust this was. So thank you.
I'm going to set this over here, so feel free to come look later and take photos of it if you want to get a really good look at that.
And now we'd like to talk about some of the other things that you see here in the room. You might be wondering about these photographs over here, and Sarah's going to start off telling you a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there is an international exhibit called Witch Hunts in the 21st Century, a Human Rights Catastrophe. Catastrophe is a big word, but it is accurate. Currently, it is a crisis that's happening around the world. This is Just like the women, Rebecca and Mary, it's the same thing. They weren't persecuted for having beliefs in witchcraft. They were persecuted for being perceived as causing harm with witchcraft. And those same fears are persecuting women, men, and children today. This international photo exhibit contains this picture. This is from Windsor. Her, Alice Young, your first accused alleged witch, her memory brick, is traveling the world in university art exhibit halls. And it's part of a whole story. We have a PDF of that we are gonna have running on my computer in a little bit so that you can see more of those photos. One of our colleagues out of Nigeria, Leo Igwe, came in 2023 to talk to Senator Anwar and Jane Garibay about the significance of the exoneration legislation and what that means to his work in Nigeria. And when he was here in New England, we went to Proctor's Ledge. And this is a picture of Leo with flowers. And one of his comments that is remarkable, he said, "Your cries of innocence," and he is speaking to those that are at Proctor's Ledge in Massachusetts, "are the same cries of innocence that we're still hearing today." And then do you want to talk about your photo?
Okay. The final photo here at the bottom, I don't know if you can all see it, but maybe afterwards. This is the sermon notebook of Reverend Samuel Paris from Salem Village, who wrote in here, this is open to a page where he says, "Christ knows how many devils are in his church," because he was accusing members of his own church of witchcraft. And this is actually held in the Connecticut Museum of History and Culture, just over there. So if you request it, they can bring it out to you to see. It's not on display.
That's a significant artifact in witch trial history. So these three photos are, and I do have, this is one brochure. Anyone's welcome to look through while you're here. This has the photos from the exhibit inside, if you'd like to see more of what we're talking about. As you can see, Leo's pictures there. So the other thing we want to talk about is our nonprofit. It's called End Witch Hunts. And one of our projects is A World Without Witch Hunts, which is our work with the global advocacies. The Exoneration Project and the Memorial Project here is another one of our projects.
Yeah, the Memorial Project, as you see here, this one's in Salem, Massachusetts. But we've been working, people have been working, Tony and Beth and many others, as I mentioned, working to try to get a memorial for the Connecticut witch trial victims for many, many years. And we've just entered into a partnership in Witch Hunts, the Connecticut Witch Trial Exoneration Project, with the Ancient Burying Ground Association to build a monument at the ancient burying ground, some memorial for the witch trial victims. We're going to have everybody's name on there that was accused, and it's going to, a call for designs will go out in the coming months, and if you're interested in working with us on that, just let us know before you leave today, and we get you our contact info. And
yeah, this is a remarkable opportunity, exploring what this monument can be. To my knowledge, there isn't a group monument like this where there is also historical programming. So that education piece will go right hand in hand with the monument at the ancient burying ground. They already do tours. Dr. Ross comes in and does tours. Christine Jewell does tours. But I think that is a very exciting piece. This exoneration project, it involves you guys, and it's a memorial project, and we really want you to keep tabs on this and stay in touch and be a part of this with us. It's going to take all of us to pull it off, and it's really an important memorial to make happen. If you are interested in starting donating. We have a 501c and a fund for this. And this is the QR code. You can scan that before you go today. And any amount gets it started. And we're going to have a big finish line, but we're all going to be standing there like this together with that. The other thing I want to mention real quick is you heard Tony talking about his exoneration legislation failing, all the work that was done, and it didn't get through that committee. The state of Maryland and the state of Massachusetts right now have live proposed bills that need to pass. They're both headed to a committee. These are two different groups of victims. Maryland hanged a woman named Rebecca Fowler and banished a woman named Mal Dyer. They convicted a man named John Cowman. Why am I talking about Massachusetts? Salem is just a little piece of the witch trials in Massachusetts. There were 5 people hanged in Boston prior to the Salem witch trials who have not had an exoneration. And there is a bill that is going to be going to the committee to clear their name as well. We have petitions for those. Please, please, before you go, scan the QR code so that you can sign each of those petitions, or if you have a good memory, change.org/witch trials is Massachusetts, and change.org/MD witch trials is Maryland. And we could really use your signatures on those petitions.
Okay. Are you allowed to sign petitions if you're not a resident of that state?
Yes. It's important to get signatures from all over the world and all the communities. We do updates on those petitions, so when it's time for written testimony to go in to those, into the General Assembly in Maryland and the General Court in Massachusetts, you would have the opportunity to do that. And I think you'll hear from the representatives today how it took locals and the extended community to get the exoneration done here. After we play this video from Dr. Hermes, the panel can come up, each of you on the panel. Have we checked the volume?
Dr. Catherine Hermes couldn't be here with us in person today, so she recorded this special video talking about the colonial law and why legislation to exonerate was appropriate now. So we'll hear her, and then we'll bring up the panelists.
I'm Catherine Hermes. I'm the publisher of Connecticut Explorer magazine and professor emerita from Central Connecticut State University, where I taught in the history department for 25 years. It's a great pleasure to be here. I wish I could be there in person, but thank you for asking me to make remarks at this wonderful event. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of things come to fruition, including a memorial to the people who've been accused of witchcraft. I'd like to thank Representative Jane Garibay and Senator Saad Anwar for their remarkable work in getting the resolution passed through the General Assembly, for all of the people in the Exoneration Project, Sarah Jack, Josh Hutchinson, Beth Caruso, and numerous others who helped get that resolution through and went to public hearings and wrote letters. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Richard Ross, who's with you today, for his excellent scholarship. I really think that we're lucky to have such a vibrant group operating today, not just to get the history of these events told, which is very important, but also to recognize that no matter how long ago a past injustice was done, we still have an opportunity to set the record straight, to rectify wrongs from the past, and to learn from those mistakes. So kudos to all the people who worked on getting this resolution through. I would also like to address another question that people have put to me about why it was the Connecticut General Assembly could even do this today. Why was it relevant? What did cases that were hundreds of years old have to do with an assembly that is constituted in the state of Connecticut in the 21st century in the United States of America? It was, after all, a colony of Great Britain back then. Well, when Hartford and the Connecticut colony was settled in 1637 and the fundamental orders were written, there was no charter. There was not really even a patent or anything that allowed them to govern. They were sort of governing off the Massachusetts charter and then created the fundamental orders. And of course, the colony of New Haven was a separate colony, which also had its own laws. In 1660, with the restoration of Charles II back to the throne after his father had been dethroned, Connecticut saw an opportunity, in particular John Winthrop Jr. saw an opportunity to get a charter for the colony, and he did that. That combined charter that fused the colonies of New Haven and Connecticut together has been our governing founding document, as it were. And the General Assembly used that charter to govern through the American Revolution, right up until the Constitution of 1818, the state constitution, right? So our state, even after it was independent and free of the King of England, used that charter to govern itself. And from there was a continuous legal chain of governance that emerged. It was very appropriate for this General Assembly to look back at its history and to correct something that was a wrong. Rules of evidence that should have applied even back then were often scattered to the winds because of witchcraft panic. There were certainly things that were introduced that today we would never stand for in a court of law. For example, spectral evidence, in which the specter of a person could be used to prove guilt. Recognizing that injustices were done, that innocent victims were persecuted and prosecuted, is a major step forward. We would want to do that, I think, for any group that required vindication. But we also overlook the women accused of witchcraft because it has an almost folkloric quality to it. It seems strange and bizarre and, to some extent, Halloween-y, but it wasn't. Women died. They were hanged, and that is a brutal death. Their families were distraught, and their families were ruined. Their family reputations were ruined. So this was an important project. Very proud of the legislature for taking it on, passing the resolution, and I'm very pleased to have been a small part of what was really Herculean efforts by all of the people involved in the Exoneration project. Thanks for your hard work. Thanks for all of you who are attending today and who still carry an interest in the lives of women of the past and in the outcomes of the witchcraft trials. I also hope that this will result in a very attractive memorial somewhere so that we can physically remember those women now that the resolution has passed our legislature. My small part was to help draft certain language in the resolution to make sure that the resolution included the names of all known people who were accused of witchcraft in Connecticut, because a conviction was not the only thing that could tarnish a reputation or ruin a family. Simply being accused could often haunt people through the generations. And so remembering their names and the particular context in which they were accused is extremely important to the circumstances. The witchcraft accusations and trials that took place in New England in the 17th century. They happened in a particular context, in a particular place and time. They resonate with us today because unfortunately some of the things that were present then, like misogyny, like fear of the unknown, feeling there's a battle between God and Satan for the sort of soul of the country, is something that we unfortunately still live with. The work that you're doing is extremely important, and getting a memorial that will stand to remember the names of the women and men who were accused and punished, sometimes not, is critical, I think, to continuing to stand for justice. I appreciate the opportunity to be here in spirit, and I wish you all the very best in your efforts to continue the work that you began years ago in getting exoneration, absolution, and memorialization of the victims of witch hunting.
So I guess we'll introduce them again. Senator Anwar, Representative Jane Garibay, Dr. Richard Ross III, who has his books here for purchase. Mary Bingham, who's part of the Exoneration Project. She made a beautiful video at Proctor's Ledge naming the victims of the Connecticut Witch Trial and sent that to representatives here. Jane received that, and that was part of the conversation when this HJ 34 came to fruition. Tony Grigo and Beth Crusoe, author of the Witch Trial, Connecticut Witch Trial trilogy.
Okay. Our first question is for you, Representative Garibay. You led the way to get HJ 34 through the Joint Commission on the Judiciary and through the House, where it passed 121 to 30, overwhelming. Why was getting it passed possible, and what did it take?
Well, at about the same time, I was hearing from people from this group. Senator Anwar was hearing it from one of his constituents. And as I mentioned before, every piece was important. I think if there had been one piece missing, it just wouldn't have happened. So when it went through the House, we had to change a few words. We had to do, I remember when I was told, you gotta go talk to so-and-so and so-and-so, and I'm like, oh no, please. But we had to work to get people on board so that it wouldn't be filibustered. That was our fear, that they would just talk and talk. In the end, what happened was, the first time I've ever seen in 6 years, my colleagues, 15 or 20 of them, stood up with me when I took out the bill. And especially the young women in the House of Representatives, it was really, really important. So again, it's all those pieces to come out. It's all the work that's been done before, right? We had good materials to work with. We had the information. So it was taking it. And I think we never thought that we couldn't do it. Did we? I don't think so. We just thought, we can do this. And I have to say that this group was wonderful because they would ask me, how do we get it passed? And I would say, okay, only 6 or 7 people to testify. If you bring in 20, they're going to shut down. They chose topics. They did. We had the 2 young people, William and Catherine. And it was not easy in the Senate, if you remember, right? I mean, they were grilled. They were grilled. And they held their own, and they were just so good. So again, it was the teamwork, it's amazing, and all the support.
Senator Anwar, you were approached by a constituent whose ancestor was an accuser. Why was exoneration important to them?
Thank you so much for having me. So I'll share with you a little bit of the background. I, like most of the people in Connecticut, was not aware of the details of this. And then somebody had approached me and sat down, and we were having a conversation and said, "Can you do me a favor?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I believe my ancestors, somebody in my ancestors may have been involved, has been an accuser of murdering of the women." And so I learned more, and then when I started to do some more homework, and I was just heartbroken what had happened. And to know that this has happened right in our neighborhood, so close to where we live. And the fact that despite over 370 years, there's no recognition of this. So the internal conversations that I was having included a few of them, which included, of course, the fact that it has been so many years we have not done anything. And now by that time, obviously, the two of us talked, but did not talk about this aspect. And when we actually proposed our bill, they said, "Oh my God, Jane is doing this too." I said, "Well, then I'm doing something right." But I want to explore the fact that somebody's not confirmed belief, but a belief and understanding that somebody multiple generations, 370 years ago, their great-great-great-grandparent had done something wrong, was hurting an individual in the current times. And so we hear about generational trauma, and the generational trauma can happen when somebody's hurt, but also when somebody's hurting someone else. And so that was like, this is so important because our conversation was emotional. And it was coming from a deep-seated place. And throughout this journey with everybody who was involved, it was very clear that generational trauma was very real to the time when we actually passed it in the Senate. We were in tears, but the family members who had traveled, they were in tears together with us. We were all hugging and we were crying. And to recognize that we were grieving for something that happened 370 years ago, or 370, whatever number, helped us realize that it is never too late to stand up and say what was done was wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Ross, when you wrote your book, Before Salem, Witch Hunting in the Connecticut River Valley, 1647 to 1663, what did you think that you would be able to, through your studies of witch trials in Connecticut?
Good question. When I started off, I started to teach a course at Trinity for my freshman students on witch trials. I've always been interested in them. I'm a European historian, so I sort of looked at it a little bit differently. One of the things that was astonishing is the fact that I didn't even know this, of course, that nobody knew anything about witch trials in Connecticut. Even today, you go around and ask people, they don't know. So I started, being a historian, of course, I wanted to make sure my students wrote papers, and they needed sources. But there weren't very many sources. I had plenty of sources on Salem witch trials, but I wanted to do something about Connecticut. So I spent time doing some research on various sources, and then when I retired, I decided that I would take the information and turn it into a book. Looking at the two books, like Devil in the Shape of a Woman, which was basically economic and feminist, and Entertaining Satan, which was sociological and psychological, which is fine. I looked at it from a standpoint of what I called structural forces, which are all the outside forces, outside activities that were occurring, that were affecting what was going on here. Learned a lot of things about, especially this early period of immigration, when the colonists came over. They were still devoutly connected with England. That there was the effect of the English Civil War and the consequences of that, because they were very religious, and so obviously that was Civil War was that was an important part of the English Civil War. And then the influence of people like Matthew Hopkins from East Anglia, who was the witch hunter. The other thing that I learned was the New England colonies were left on their own primarily from the 1630s to 1660. Their laws were a mixture of English statute and biblical prescriptions, etc. Of course, the unease of the instability of the New England frontier. And one thing that was very important, which comes up all the time when people are being accused of witchcraft, is the North American colonists feared, of course, they might be physically attacked by the Indians, but the ministers also preached that the Indians were agents of the devil and were prepared to attack them spiritually. So that's why there wasn't as much interaction between the Indians and the colonists as you might think. And when there was suggestions of witchcraft. They lived in a harsh environment. I can go on, of course, I don't need to, but what happened was, particularly for the thing that we're talking about, time period we're talking about, was when the Protectorate under Oliver Cromwell collapsed in England. It really sent, one of the things that sent the colonies into a real unease. And the last thing was when our good friend Charles II came back to the throne. That really flipped them out. Basically, those are the kinds of things I was looking at and said, how can I incorporate this information into history? And the other thing I wanted to make clear, it seemed to me, was that it wasn't an organic, witchcraft wasn't, didn't rise organically. It was influenced. There were too many influences, and I needed to look at them and try to describe what happened and understand why the things that happened here, in Connecticut in particular, happened here back then. It's a lot to say.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Okay.
Also, Mary, why do you feel it was important to clear the names of those accused of witchcraft in Connecticut?
I think it's a very good question. I guess I had been blessed, for lack of a better term, because when I found out about my ancestors in Salem, they had all been cleared. And then, but I think that when the exoneration of Elizabeth Johnson Jr. was coming up because they realized that they had, Salem in that area had forgotten her. She was unfortunately overlooked. And that came about in 2022. And then I started thinking, well, that was very important to get her exonerated. But now I know that Connecticut had a whole bunch that were not exonerated. And so therefore, I hooked up with everybody here and just realized that, again, from what Jane had said about the generational trauma and Dr. Anwar about the generational trauma, it's important for the descendants living today to have that exoneration. So I want to say we do have author Richard Haight back there, who is actually part of Elizabeth Johnson Jr.'s exoneration. And if it wasn't for that, maybe that taking place, that maybe Connecticut would have happened, but it would have taken a little bit longer. I'm not sure. I'm a little grappling for words. But thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Tony, you've been involved in this for 20 years now. Why is it so important to you to remember the victims of Connecticut's witch trials?
Well, simply put, it was an injustice to begin with. None of those people practiced witchcraft as we know what it is today. But I also want to give a little thought to this. All of you are sitting on the same spot that the meeting house was in 1640, where many of those trials were probably held. If any of those magistrates were ever to return to this spot today, you would all be in court for witchcraft. With all these little electronic devices.
Thank you, Tony. Beth, you have written extensively about Alice Young and researched her with Dr. Hermes, so make sure you tell us about your article too. Why is her story important to us?
Alice Young's story was, when I first heard about it, it was extremely important for me to share because I felt like no one had really bared witness to her. I was reading some books about Salem. Mary Johnson, our second witch trial victim, was mentioned, but Alice Young wasn't even mentioned there. I live in Windsor. I was horrified to realize most people, at least half the town, didn't even know about her there. So how does healing ever come about? And our country has a lot of healing to do, obviously. Whether we're talking about witch trials, whether we're talking about slavery, there are a lot of injustices towards a lot of people. The witch trial, people who suffered during the witch trials are just one group. But starting with Alice, paying attention to her story, and not taking for granted just stuff that was just thrown out there. I decided I really wanted to do a deep dive into the history and to bear witness, to get as close to her as I possibly could in that way. And that's how the books came about. But she was important because that was the beginning. That started the trajectory going all the way to Salem. And most people don't realize that there is this whole trajectory, that there is this continuing energy that built up. Salem was like the big fireworks at the end, if you will. But it's with the case of Alice Young that the patterns and the permission was given to persecute people in this way. With my research, I realized in the very, very early research, I nearly fell off my chair because there was some talk, speculation about a flu epidemic being the cause for, this witch trial case. I have a background in nursing and also in public health, so I kind of put that hat on when I was looking through these vital statistics and realized the largest cluster of deaths that happened in Windsor during that time was right next to the Young property. There were 4 children that died. And from there, you look at the trajectory and you see these other witch trial situations, the Hartford witch panic, which we learned a little bit about today, the plague. How did that start? It started with a sick child. How did the Salem thing start out? Sick children. And so I wondered, did this case of Alice Young, was it the setup where further patterns were started? 2 things that you often see as parts of these witch trials are the fits. Well, as a nurse, I look and I say, well, okay, if a child has influenza and they're very sick to the point where they could die from it, which still happens, by the way, they can have febrile seizures. Fits seem to be parts of all of these stories. You also, the spectral evidence, people saying, oh, someone was pinching me, their specter came to me and they were hurting me. To this day, I can tell you, people who have high fevers, they can imagine things. And all this type of evidence shows up in all these stories. So I felt like, you know, for Alice, so she could have a voice, so she could be recognized, because that is healing in and of itself. But beyond that, to kind of get a perspective of what was going on and where could this have injustice have started, that is something that we can readily understand from a scientific perspective today. So if you're interested in learning more, Thomas Thornton, the man whose children died in Windsor, he became a minister later on. And I don't know what his influence was. Dr. Hermes and I researched this extensively. The paper is in the Connecticut History Review from fall of 2023. And it talks about Thornton, how he becomes a minister after his children dies. And guess where he ends up at the very end of his life? He's living in Salem. He's a minister in Cotton Mather's church. Judge Sewell is at his bedside when he dies. So there is a continuum, and I really do hope that more research comes about.
Thank you, Beth. Josh, we have a podcast, Witch Hunt. How was it important with this Exoneration project, but what has the learning journey been past the resolution?
We started our podcast, Witch Hunt, the beginning of October 2022. It was originally just to kind of not promote the witch trials, but to make people aware that Connecticut had witch trials. So our first few episodes are all about Connecticut. And then we branched out thinking, oh, there's also Salem and Massachusetts and other witch trials in New England that we can talk about. People are interested in those. They'll start listening to the show, and then we'll hit them with more Connecticut. So we kept doing Connecticut episodes for the first year, intermingling England and Scotland and a few other places. But along the way, we met a man from South Africa named Damon Leff, and he runs an advocacy against witch hunts. Because in South Africa and at least 60 nations around the world, within the last 15 years or so, there have been killings of people because they're accused of witchcraft. And the scenarios are a lot the same as what we read about in Connecticut and other New England and English witch trials, where somebody's child gets sick, their livestock die, their crops don't come in, some great misfortune befalls somebody, and they're looking for what happened to me. Certainly it wasn't something that I did, but somebody did this to me. So then they'll look for somebody to accuse of witchcraft. They might go to a diviner or maybe a religious leader and say, can you help me identify the witch that's doing this? And that person, for a fee, will locate a witch. So there are professional people, witch finders around the world, who accuse people of witchcraft, knowing that they're going to be killed by a mob, they're going to be murdered violently. So that's been the learning journey, is just coming along knowing that what we were talking about happening 378 years ago or so, it's still happening today. It never actually ended. In Connecticut, we know that accusations were still being made in the 18th and 19th centuries, and even into the 20th century, there were rumors that would show up in newspapers about the witches of Bristol and the witches of this place and that place. And so witch hunting really went from being these public witch trials to this off-the-books kind of extrajudicial, we know you're a witch, the law's not going to do anything about it, we're going to do something about it. So that's what's happened in our world, that's what I've been learning about, and that's what our nonprofit in witch hunts is about raising awareness of what's happening right now.
That's great. That podcast is at witchhuntshow.com. Many of the panelists have done interviews with us. Dr. Kermis did, and many of our colleagues across the world who advocate in their communities against these attacks are also on there talking about their experiences.
Okay, I have a question for you, Sarah. All right. What purposes would a memorial serve other than reflecting upon the past?
It shouldn't just be about the past. It shouldn't just be a monument that sits and gathers dust. For me as a descendant, it's important because I want to be able to walk up and think about Winifred's experience and the more unfortunate victims here who perished. But it's such an opportunity for education. And if this is a successful monument project at the ancient burying ground, we have that educational component right there on site. And with their website, that's going to be significant. So the local community can learn about the history. People are going to come from all over to look at it and to learn. People are going to come from these other countries, just like Lou Igwe came and went to Proctor's Ledge. There are immigrants in our country now who were in communities in their home community and may have seen somebody go through this. This memorial would be meaningful to them. So it's part of catching up on that lost time that Dr. Anwar mentioned. We've gone this long without the acknowledgement. We're going to acknowledge what happened, but we can acknowledge what's happening.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to go at it one more time. And Senator Anwar, we saw you listening to descendants in the community and to global advocates like Lou Igwe. What were they telling you that motivated your efforts?
Thank you for this question, and thank you for your remarks earlier as well, Sarah. So what became quite clear is that what we do over here is sometimes used as a legitimacy for others in other parts of the world to feel justified to do wrong, no matter how long ago it was. In our conversation in Nigeria, it was clearly stated that, look, it's happened in the United States. And they said, if you make a statement, it would make our lives much easier. And Dr. Ego was clear about the fact that if you can make a statement, I will have a power to be able to take that the state of Connecticut in the United States has made and said that this was wrong, and what you're doing today is wrong. And I think that's a part of a very critical message that we should have, that we are considered one of the, historically at least, a moral part of the world. And we have to make sure that we are conscious of that responsibility that we have. I just want to touch on another component which is about this memorial, is what has happened with the witch hunts and in Connecticut and beyond. It's a textbook case of dehumanization. It's a textbook case of how you make it okay as a society to say that there's certain people who are worthy to be hurt, murdered, killed, maimed, whatever they do. Look at the Disney movies. Look at our English language word about witch hunt. To this day, people use this. And so when you look at this fact, I think these memorials will tell us and help us understand that what we may be doing today in 2024, 2025, 2026, it would be sad if 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, 100 years later, our descendants would say that we were doing wrong. And then we have to start to become conscious, and these memorials would help us memorialize the wrong, but also tell us how our present is linked to that wrong. And I think that's important, and we have to become conscious when the the machinery of our society in a systematic manner dehumanizes human beings. And it's happening right now. It's happening every day. And that's where we have to start to say, no, we won't allow that anymore. We will resist it today, like people in 370 years ago were resisting as well.
Thank you, Senator Anwar. Representative Garibay, the exoneration legislation included an apology for the witch trials. What was the significance of that piece of the resolution?
From the way I look at it, that was important because it was the government that prosecuted these people. It was through these trials that they did that. And I believe that many times throughout history, it is a way to control people, control what they do, the misogyny, for a woman to become pregnant, imprisoned until she had the baby, executed, and the baby given to a sheriff, indentured servant until he was 21. The government allowed that, so that's why it was important for the government to say they were sorry and that they had a part in this. It wasn't just individuals like John Mason.
Thank you. Dr. Ross, we want to make sure and thank you today for your book that adds significant remarked on how important your work was. How did you know we needed that book? Why was there still room for that?
I have no idea. I'm going to tell you, when I wrote this book, I really wrote it for like students and academic, to be used in the class. And I guess what I said before was I looked at what the other books that have been written, and I wanted to put the witch trials into a context to what was society like and why did these things happen and how did they happen. And I hadn't really seen that before. A lot of times when you read books about trials like that, they just kind of go from a trial to the trial to the trial. And there's nothing about what is really going on in society, as I said before, about how is the government interacting, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I kind of look at more. I'm going to just say it's a holistic approach to this problem, rather than sort of a singular approach from, as I said, one trial to the next without, why did this happen? Who are these people? And I try to connect a lot of people too, families in particular. Why were these families, why did it happen to these families? And how were they connected? And there's a lot of connections, as we've seen. But Beth said too, when you look into this, you start to find that there's so many more connections you could ever think of. And we're fortunate to have the kind of information today where we can look these things up and actually provide evidence for what we're saying. Whereas years and years ago, it would have been almost impossible to get the kind of material that's available now to do these things. So that's what happened. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ross. Mary, you're committed to eliminating witch hunts in the modern day. Are there lessons that we can take from the Connecticut Witch Trials that would help us today?
Yes, there are many lessons. I think, first of all, is to recognize what's going on in the communities where these witch hunts are taking place, who's being accused, who are the accusers, why are they being accused, and why are these accusers accusing people. We have, not many of you know, but we do have people that are listening in, advocates who are very strong, who are listening in right over here from Ghana and from Portugal and India, right on my camera over there. And they are they are very influential in telling and witch hunts about what's going on in the world right now, in their countries, and incidences that Dr. Lauren and Jane and you, Josh, have told us about. There are so many parallels. We actually still have cases that are going on in the United States right now, and Witch Hunts is tracking about 120 cases where children and adults are being accused of, their, influencing their environment through demonic possession, or just being possessed by the devil because a child is sick or somebody is sick. They just don't understand what's going on. They are not making use of the education or things like that that are lacking in various communities. There is one case that is going to trial, hopefully this year, in California. And it was the case of little Relly Proctor, who was 3 years old, and her mother and her uncle and her grandfather all believed that because she exhibited signs of being sick, that she was possessed by the devil. And in this particular case, they were believers of a particular religion, but the mother and the uncle did not believe that the little girl was possessed by the devil due to the church that they were going to. It was due to other influences surrounding them that they believed that had happened. In the United States right now, it is not illegal to accuse somebody of witchcraft, or demonic possession. So when they bring these cases before the courts, they have to prove like homicide. And then it comes across in the motive is when they introduce why they believe that this child was killed. So sadly, these parallels between these cases today in the United States and all around the world and those cases that happened 400 years ago, there are strong parallels that are still going on, and they're going on in very different ways as well as very similar ways. I hope that answers your question. That was great. Thank you.
Thanks for bearing with us. I know it's not bearing at all, but I know we've given you a lot of information today. We have 2 more questions, and then we're going to go into the remembrance ceremony with the flowers, led by our friend Sherry Kuiper of the Associated Daughters of Early American Witches Association. Tony, what do you think of all the ways you see Connecticut remembering this history now?
Well, I'm going to start off with a word that probably many of you have never heard. It's called a cenotaph. And basically what it is, it's a monument to somebody who was buried elsewhere. Now that was mostly used with soldiers that were, during the war, were buried in other countries. Here in Connecticut, recently, there's been a memorial or a monument. There's one in Stratford now. There's one in Fairfield. And of course, nothing in Hartford. So to get, and the other point is, with the exception of a few people in New England, we have no idea where any of these people were buried. There is no stone, no monument for family members and descendants to walk to and say, this is my great-great-grandfather 10 times removed. There is none. So by putting up a memorial, it's a focus point for people that do genealogy research, people that want to go to a family member's last resting spot. So it's important what we're doing here today.
Thank you, Tony. Beth, why is it important to remember Governor John Winthrop Jr. when we talk about the Connecticut Witch Trials?
John Winthrop Jr. was a very important historical figure in Connecticut for many reasons, but pertaining to the witch trials, he was so important because he basically stopped the witch trials in Connecticut by his actions. A lot of people who would have, who were accused, who were indicted, who would have otherwise hanged, did not because of his interference. He came into Connecticut as an alchemical physician. And because, and in those days, you know, alchemy, it was the beginnings of science, later led to modern day chemistry. And so he was looking at things more objectively. And even though it was just budding science at the time, and some of it we wouldn't really recognize as science anymore. But he was looking at things more objectively, and they would call him into the early trials and they would ask him, do you think this is a medical issue, or do you think this is a demonic type of issue or an issue with witchcraft? He never ever, in all the trials that he witnessed and was a expert witness, and he never said, oh yes, this is witchcraft. He acknowledged, well, maybe your community, maybe you have reason to be upset with these people, but it's not because of witchcraft. Maybe it's because of how they carry themselves, or they're rude to other people, or whatever, but it's not witchcraft. And you quickly see the cases of people being convicted just drop after he gets involved. From 1647 to 1654, there were 7 victims, and it was like just boom, 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 boom. And a lot of people who fled, because you knew if you stayed in Connecticut with that record, you were done. So there was a lull in the convictions here in Connecticut from 1654 all the way until the Hartford Witch Panic. And it was because of his influence. And then in the meantime, he becomes governor. So why is there the Hartford Witch Panic? Well, he's governor of Connecticut by then. He knows we need a charter, so he goes to England. So it's in his absence that the Hartford Witch Panic takes place. And interestingly enough, when he comes back, many of his patients have died. Mary Barnes was a patient of his who you saw acted out earlier. Mary Sanford, she was a patient of John Winthrop Jr. So when he came back, he did his best to stop the witch trials again. With the case of Elizabeth Seeger, she was convicted of witchcraft, but he did not let the conviction stand. She was basically reprieved by John Winthrop Jr. And then finally, we think the Hartford Witch Panic was the last of the witch trials that led to killings, because he and other alchemists wrote a summary and recommendations saying that the spectral evidence, you can't have that. There has to be 2 witnesses to that. Well, guess what? That really stopped the killings and the indictments turning into convictions, because with that spectral evidence, you weren't going to get 2 witnesses. So he did so much, and this is something that Connecticut can be really proud of as far as its history, that we had this man who was looking at things much more objectively, who was able to really slow things down here in Connecticut. And this is like 30 years, 25 years before Salem even happens.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for this.
Okay, another word.
I just want to say thank you to the staff here at the State House. When you came to me, where could you hold this, and you were having this idea of a memorial, and they got a call from my office, and I went and I came and met. They were totally on board, and you guys just worked all so well together to bring this all together, and this is like the perfect place.
It was. Please stay with us for our remembrance piece of the program. I do want to bring up Kristen Jewell real quick, if you don't mind, coming up and just saying what they can expect at the ancient burying ground, and if there's any words you want to say about this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for letting Ancient Burying Ground Association be a part of this program. If anyone is interested, we are going to walk to the Ancient Burying Ground after the program, get some fresh air, and Richard Ross is going to come with me as well. So we can go over there and see some of the magistrates who are involved in the witchcraft trials and talk a little bit more over in the Ancient Burying Ground. So we'll meet out front a little bit after the program. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And now Sherry Kuiper is going to come up and do our memorial portion of this. Thank you, Sherry.
Hello everyone, she said, my name is Sherry Kuiper. I am a descendant of Alice Young, as a few others here in the audience are, including my mom, who's with me today. And I am a member, the Historian General of the Associated Daughters of American Witches, of Early American Witches, excuse me. We are gathered here to acknowledge the loss of 11 innocent people who were murdered under the guise of witchcraft, but also to recognize the state of Connecticut's resolution that officially absolves them of any crime. They are Alice Young, Mary Johnson, Joan Carrington, John Carrington, Goodwife Bassett, Goodwife Knapp, Lydia Gilbert, Mary Sanford, Nathaniel Greensmith, Rebecca Greensmith, and Mary Barnes. These 11 people were accused of crimes that they did not commit, and they were subjected to a trial that was anything but fair. They were convicted without evidence, and they were executed without mercy. Others from Connecticut were also accused, who fortunately were not executed. These people were not witches. They were simply different, not fitting into a mold that was acceptable at the time. They were brave, and they were martyrs to the cause of freedom and tolerance. We will never forget those 11 people who were murdered for the name of witchcraft. They will always be in our hearts and minds. Let us use this remembrance ceremony as a reminder to never pass up an opportunity to speak out against all forms of intolerance and bigotry. We must all work together to create a world where everyone is respected, valued, regardless of their beliefs or differences. May those 11 people who were murdered in the name of witchcraft rest in peace. At this time, I'd like to ask Jennifer Schlote to come up and read a poem called Prevail. It was written by Jessica Romano, and it's about justice. And this special poem was written for the organization, the Innocence Project.
I just want to say it's an honor to read this beautiful poem. I just read it for the first time this morning, and I'm a middle school teacher of history, which I think is the most important subject, and literature, and my students raise money for the Innocence Project every year, and so it was sort of interesting how this came together, and I'm very flattered that I was asked to read this beautiful poem. It's called Prevail. Those who are never accused do not realize how it changes you. Even if exonerated, you are never really excused. Like the loss of the victim, you have lost too. The ache and the pain never end. Even when freedom is gained, the support and prayers help you mend, but somewhere that hurt still remains. We think of our justice system as being fair and right. When jurors go home, it's over for them. The innocent are left in the dark of the night, away from your loved ones. All you can hope for is that one day you won't have to fight, that you will finally get to see the sun, time lost you can never get back. Let your hopes and dreams never fail. Don't give up. You cannot crack. Always believe that the truth will prevail.
Thank you, Jennifer. We do have one singular candle lit here to recognize the innocence of all of the Connecticut Witch Trial victims. We will now honor each person individually with a flower. As we do this, I ask that you please quietly reflect on the trials and tribulations of these men and women and what it means to stand up to injustice. We will start with 11 white roses for the 11 victims who were executed. At this time, I would ask Sue Bailey and Patricia Bruin, both Alice Young descendants, Beth, Tony, Sarah, and Josh, to please go to the back and start the procession of flowers. We'll see the white roses back there. And as I read the names, you can lay the flowers here at the table, just as a symbolic acknowledgement of these victims. And I ask that the audience, you also may participate if you feel so moved. The 11 hanged were Alice Young, 1647. Mary Johnson, 1648. Joan Carrington, 1651. John Carrington, 1651. Goodwife Bassett, 1651. Goodwife Knapp, 1653. Lydia Gilbert, 1654. Mary Sanford, 1662. Nathaniel Greensmith, 1663. Rebecca Greensmith, 1663. And Mary Barnes, 1663. And there's also a 12 white rose for the children who lost parents during the Connecticut Witch Trials. We also have green flowers there to symbolize the 22 named in the resolution who are convicted or accused but not executed. Elizabeth Seeger, Goodwife Bailey, Nicholas Bailey, Elizabeth Goodman, Elizabeth Garlick, Margaret Jennings, Nicholas Jennings, Judith Bartlett, Andrew Sanford, William Ayers, Judith Ayers, James Wakely, Catherine Harrison, William Graves, Elizabeth Clausen, Hugh Procia, Mercy Disborough, Mary Harvey, Hannah Harvey, Mary Staples, Winifred Benham, and Winifred Benham Jr. And please, as you feel moved, continue to lay a flower in their remembrance. At this time, I'd also like to invite Sarah Jack, who will lay a bouquet for all of the modern witch trial victims that we see today and that we've learned about.
And these are for our modern sisters, brothers, and children that are suffering from the same persecutions.
We will be taking these flowers over with us to the ancient burial grounds to leave them there for the final act of today's remembrance ceremony. Thank you all for participating in this ceremony and continuing to share the stories of the witch trial victims. Thank you.